Welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast, where we discuss business acquisitions, investments, management, and exit strategies. I'm your host, Matt Uhler. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of What's Your Deal. I'm joined today by Alexa D'Agostino. I'll walk through her introduction and then we will dive right into some great information. Alexa is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and marketing strategist known for scaling companies and generating billions in revenues across multiple industries. But really, what sets her apart is her focus on building systems, teams, and environments that create real, scalable wealth, not just short-term success. She is also the founder of the Wealth Mastery Summit, where she brings together high-level entrepreneurs, investors, and operators into one room to collaborate, build partnerships, and create real opportunities. I've had the opportunity to get to know Alexa, and I also will be speaking at the upcoming Wealth Mastery Summit in Las Vegas in October. And so I'm so excited to go deeper into this topic with you. Alexa, welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast.
Thank you for having me, Matt. I'm so excited to be here. What a great topic to dive into today.
Yes, thank you. It's honestly being the host of the podcast is one of the things I enjoy most because I get to talk with amazing people and try to extract all the information and knowledge they have that I can and the time allowed. And it's a great look behind the curtain. So one of the things I'd like to start about is you've surrounded yourself, and we're going to dive more into the Wealth Mastery Summit, but you've surrounded yourself by lots of amazing people that have accumulated a lot of wealth. And I'd love it if you could share with us what you think one of the biggest myths is that most people have about how to build real wealth.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of myths out there on the things that you need to do, become wealthy, of all these, one-hit wonder type of programs out there. And they claim that you'll be, wealthy and a millionaire in a month, But to me, the biggest myth is that wealth is built in a single move. People talk about, I just need that one thing. And it's not, it's not the exit, it's not the viral product, it's not the one deal, it's none of that. Wealth is built from systems, boring, repeatable, compounding systems, right? And the people you see hit it big had 10 years of invisible work of failures and things not working. Matt, you and I had a conversation of how many things that we've had that didn't hit, right? That's just the name of the game. And so I would say the biggest myth that I've heard is that it's a single move. The second myth I would say is, and to me, probably the most dangerous one, is that wealth is about how much you make. It's not. It's actually more about what you need to be free. And that answer is very different. If I ask you what's your freedom number and I tell you mine, I'm sure it's very, very different. And so a lot of times what people think is that you have to make more and more money to become financially free, and that you have to make more and more money to be wealthy. And you don't. What you have to understand is what's that number to you to live the lifestyle that you want. And also part of the biggest problem, especially in the younger generation today, is that people spend stupid money. They don't understand that wealth is about keeping your money and putting it into making money to put it into other income streams, such as commercial real estate and other areas, to then give you back that time. Now that's wealth building. And a lot of people just think that it's making, I've met people that are making $300K a year and they're broke. And I've met people making $120K who own their time, their assets, their life. And to me, one of them is wealthy, and it's not the one with the high income, right? So real wealth isn't a number, it's an engine.
There's so much in that. It's really amazing. Again, I was going to ask you to define wealth, and you went down that road, but it is personal. And the other piece that you touched on, which I feel passionate about, is especially with what's going on in social media today, it's so easy to just see the green grass on the other side, but the journey doesn't usually get documented or shared. And to your point, I've had lots of trips and falls and mistakes and issues and still do. And it's so easy now to just focus on what would appear to be an amazing life because what shows up on social media. And the reality is we're all human and we're all trying to find our way.
Exactly. I think that when you think about entrepreneurship, if you think about wealth building, it's a journey. You just said it. It's a journey of figuring out not just how to create wealth, but how to keep it. But also, it's a personal journey. I can't tell you how the wealthier I get and the bigger the circles I get. And I know we're going to talk about this, but when I got into the wealth mastery, I called it the Wealth Mastery Summit because I thought that's actually what rich people wanted to talk about. And what I'm actually finding is that rich people don't want to talk about getting wealthier. They actually want to talk about purpose and life and impact and things that are actually completely outside of wealth. And what I'm learning is, the higher I climb, the smaller my circle, but also the higher I climb, the more I'm actually trying to find who I am. And I'm on this like soul searching kind of journey myself, and I find a lot of other people that have had success are on that same journey as well.
Well, that's great. And I wonder, because I feel very much the same in a lot of ways. Is it because when we move from survival that then we're able to focus on the other aspects of life? I mean, is that where you think it is, or what changes that focus for somebody who's trying to climb up, as you use that term?
Well, I mean, I think, I mean, you could argue my wife and I have been financially free for the last 12-ish years. And so financially free to me means we can live at the lifestyle that we have now without working, right? That's what financially freedom means to me.
Okay.
And I feel like at some point you ask yourself, what's next? Or, what can I do to make the world a better place? I know that sounds stupid, but it's, we're here on this earth for a reason. And what is that reason? Was it to make money and be wealthy, or was it to do something bigger for ourselves? And it's funny because my daughter, we got her this thing and it says, save, it says give, save, spend. And every time she gets money, she's 5, she has to put in one. And so we weren't really paying attention. And at one point we saw that all of her money was in give, which is like so sweet. But we had to kind of teach her, it's really good to give, but you got to save and actually like build your life first before you can give it all away. Right. And we had to kind of teach her that. And I think it's because she's seen my wife and I trying to go on this like journey of trying to create bigger impact in the world and to do things outside of ourselves and to help, part of the wealth mastery, a large portion of, we've donated 762,000 to date to human trafficking, as an example,
That's
right?
amazing.
And it's $3,200 to save a kid. And so we've donated, and think about hundreds of kids that we've saved to date. And to me, that's making an impact. These kids are out there and somebody needs to help, and it's not a ton of money, but it's enough to save, a few hundred kids. That's enough for us to make a difference.
Well, it's huge. I heard a story. It was actually a gentleman named Og Mandino back many, many years ago. And he shared a story about a gentleman who was walking down the beach, and the storm had brought in all kinds of the starfish, and they were all over the place. And there was this kid walking along, and he was throwing the starfish in. And the older gentleman came up and said, what are you doing? He said, well, I just, they're going to die if they stay here on the beach. And so I'm throwing them back in the water. And the older gentleman said, listen, kid, what makes you think you're going to make a difference? There's thousands of starfish on this beach. And the kid thought to himself for a second and bent over and picked up a starfish and threw it in the water. And he said, well, mister, I made a difference to the life of that one. And I think when you talk about 700 and so many $1,000, that's a lot of lives to impact. And it's a huge focus from what you and your family might need to what you might be able to give and impact the world with. So I acknowledge what you're doing and how you're doing it. And it's definitely, to me, falls right into what is wealth. Being able to give back in a way that is meaningful is a huge part of that in my definition.
Exactly.
So when you talk about being in the room at your Wealth Mastery Summit, what are the people? I know you've got billionaires there, you've got millionaires there. What if it's not about more wealth, what are you finding that it's about that they do want to talk about? What are the conversations that happen in that room?
So what's interesting is, so when I started building this, my only criteria was that you had to have a net worth of $1 million. That was my only criteria. And as it got bigger and bigger, I started to get a wait list. I started getting more and more people. I started to tweak my interview process little by little. Now that we've been running this for almost 7 years, I think we're on like the 19th wealth summary summit, something like that. And what I started to do is there's a couple different things, right? So there's a couple moments in this that completely changed the way that this has gone about. And one of the reasons why I created this room was because I felt like every time I went into some of these other rooms, either the room is too big and you have these stages where you see people speak on front of the rooms, and those rooms are good because they're inexpensive to get in and you can hear speakers speak like Aspire. They're all really, really good events. And I'm not saying they're not, but for me, where I was in my career, I needed people around my table, and I couldn't get people around my table by going to other people's events and some of these other masterminds where you sit around the table with folks that might not be the people that you would put in your inner circle. It's the people that are on the front of the stage and on the stage that you want to talk to. And so that's why I put this event together. All peers, I would say the average net worth is about 12 million. It increases every year. It used to be 1 to 2 million, and it's increased. And now, if you argue, we just added 2 of the richest families in the world. So I don't include them because it would really throw that number off, to be honest. But they are coming to the next event as well, which really surprised me. But again, they liked it so much they want to come back and they want to actually be part of the group, which is pretty freaking cool. But the criteria that I ask for is, are you somebody I'd want to grab a drink with? Like, I know this sounds really crazy, but like, I want cool people to hang out with. And then the third is, do you want to learn as much as you want to teach? And if the answer is no, then you're not meant for this room. We want people. I've had billionaires taking notes and people that want to learn. I actually had, and this actually will answer your question, I promise. I had a billionaire that my wife was like, babe, who's that guy? Like, he has like a whole book of notes. And I was like, I started laughing. I'm like, that guy's worth $4 billion. And he had more notes than everybody. And then we had a breakout session right after. And he had like, and the question was, what's your biggest challenge? And he had like 7 challenges. And he was asking us like, hey, can you help me find a CFO? Yada, yada. And then the guy next to him, who does about $1 million a year, said he had no challenges. And so you could see who was and wasn't the right fit. So when you look at, what do people in the room want? They want access, right? So they want access to people that can actually help them. I think that there's when you have people that just want to give, and they don't want to take, it has to be give and take of relationship. It can't be one way or the other. Otherwise, it's uneven. So I think it's really important that people in the room do need something. That's why you're coming. And it's and there's no sales allowed. So you can't sell in a room. What you do is build real partnerships, real deals, real relationships. And between the last event, so far, we've had $21 million worth of deals that I know of that have been done. And that's without you having the ability to sell, right? The second thing is, the relationships are really important because it is lonely at the top. I could tell you, through my event, I have built my boardroom and the people that I go to. And while you have your spouse and I have a great relationship, sometimes you need somebody else that you can talk to. And that's really important. It's important to be around people that have been where you are, whether it's emotionally, whether it's financially, and you can ask those people those questions. You're breaking bread with these people. And so, I think relationships is, and not a salesy relationships is really, really important. And they want to talk about the next chapter. A lot of these folks have had exits. A lot of them are going from CEO to chairman. We have I would say probably at least 30% of our room wants to transition to that. We have probably a third of the room that are already chairman. And then we have a third of the room that are just trying to find their number 2, right? So it's like an interesting mix of people. And so you have people that are going through this transition period, and they want to talk about what is that next chapter, and they want to talk to people that have actually done it. So, I mean, honestly, it is about impact. It's about relationships. It's about what's next. What's the next chapter? It's about how we could do something bigger than us, right?
Well, and it also sounds like, because of the way you've designed it, it creates a mastermind alliance, so to speak, I guess. But like you said, sometimes as you move further along, it feels a little more lonely. But yet you have this peer group now that you're connected with, that everybody's sharing the same similar interests and challenges.
Exactly. And honestly, a lot of them just want to be in the room where they don't have to perform,
Hmm.
where they could drop the armor. We're all in and around. We're peers here, right? And nobody's trying to sell them. No one's trying to impress. And I think, the people that are like, oh, I can't sell on stage, like I'm not coming. They're not the right fit. Nobody
Hmm.
wants to go to an event and be sold to for 2 straight days, but yet people make millions of dollars off my event. Like I have people that get paid a ton of money, like the Tim Stories of the world and all these people that get paid a ton of money to speak that do not charge me to come to my events because they make a ton of money off the back of my events because they're building relationships and they want to be in the room with these people.
Hmm.
It's a completely different animal of an event and it's really hard to explain. But it's not, not everybody can get in. Like you have
Yeah.
to qualify, you have
Hmm.
to go through me. Every single person talks to me. And that's how I keep the essence of the event. And I'm very strict on it. Very, very strict on it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I can't wait to be there in October, and it sounds like you've created something amazing that really serves a need with a group of people that are hungry for that. So you mentioned number two. A lot of people trying to find their number two. Can you drill into that for us? And what does that mean to you? And what are the struggles that you see people have getting that number two position?
Yeah, it's actually cool. We have Claude Silver, who's Gary V's number two, coming as our keynote. We do have a surprise, and so it's going to be interesting. But the number two is a really interesting conversation that most people aren't talking about it. Everyone talks about how to build wealth, how to build your company, but nobody talks about like how do you do that? How do you actually go ahead and build this company, which means you need to have a number two behind you, right? And it's actually interesting. One of the best books that I ever read was this book called Your Number Two, and it's all about how to find the perfect number two to you. Because what we always are trying to seek for and search for is a number two that's like us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's I know that's been my mistake. I've always tried to find somebody who's exactly me because that's who we think that we should be hiring, but what we should be doing is hiring the complete opposite of us, right? And depending on what stages you are, depends on who you need to hire, right? If you're number two at $1 million is going to be different than 10, and it's going to be different at 100 million. And so it's an interesting topic that we've had so many people talk about because also too, it's like how do you find a number two to then transition eventually to chairman, right? Where you're not in there every day and you have somebody running the company. And so there's a series of steps and situations that we're going to talk about at this event. It's going to be really great.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I was working with a coaching client yesterday and they're struggling with the number two and the number three and the number four. And we just solidified that, they cannot scale the way it is. They just can't do it because the bottleneck is the owner and his wife, frankly, but there's just no more. And so the number two is such a critical point. And I think the part you brought up is amazing how often that's true, that again, we're trying to replace ourselves, right? So that we can find that freedom, but that skill set may not necessarily be the answer for what we need.
No, I mean, it's interesting. If you haven't read Second in Command by Cameron Herold, it's such a great book. And his whole thesis is the yin yang, the COO CEO dynamic. And if you don't know who he is, he built 1-800-GOT-JUNK from like 2 million to 106 million, something along those lines. So, what I appreciate about the philosophy is that the number two is the most important hire you're ever going to make. And most founders get it completely wrong. And the philosophy talks about your second in command should be great at everything you suck at. That's it. Not a mini version of you, the opposite of you, which is again what we all try to go, the biggest mistake that we do is hire us. And I've done this too. It's like they hire someone that looks at you, thinks like you, operates like you, because that person is easier to get along with in meetings. They're not going to question you. You can literally have somebody that disagrees with you, but the problem is you just double down on all your blind blind spots and a paid senior salary to do that, right? And you don't need a clone, you need a counterweight. And so if you're the visionary, big ideas, which is me, right? Charging ahead, pitching, selling, the face, you need number two that lives in the operations, the systems, the SOPs, the hiring, the retentions, and meetings that actually run on time, because mine never run on time, right? And that boring, repeatable machinery that you need, and but yet you hate, but your business would die without it. And so it's that that's the unlock most entrepreneurs never get to. They say they want to step into the CEO role, like really step into it, but we end up just being operators, and we end up just doing everything because we don't do a good job hiring that number two, number three, number four. And so it's going to be a fun conversation. I can't wait to hear, all the great things that are going to come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what do you think is the biggest barrier? I mean, why is it so hard for somebody who's operating a company and being the owner operator, even if they've got a significant staff? Why is it so hard to get their arms around hiring somebody who can do what they suck at, using your term?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're our worst enemy, right? So I'll be honest. It's ego. Like,
Okay.
everybody wants to dress up as something else. They'll tell you it's budget. I can't find the right person for the budget that I have. Nobody will care as much as I do. I used to say that all the time. And my dad one day said to me, he was like, Alexa, let me be clear. Nobody will care as much as you. Like just have to put that in your brain and expectations, because nobody is going to care as much as you ever. It's your business, right? And then when he said that, I was like, oh. And so I can't use it as an excuse anymore because it's just what's expected. Or I've been burned before. I'm not gonna lie, I've done that before. I had a couple number twos that burned me. One stole $172,000 from me, and so all of that's just a cover story. The real answer is ego, because hiring a real number two means admitting three things that most founders won't emotionally do. One, that you're not the smartest person in the company anymore. And if you're still the smartest person in your company's too small, or you don't really have a company, right?
Mm-hmm.
You built this thing from nothing. Yes, your name is on it potentially, or your identity is probably most likely infused into it. And now you walk in the room and this person is probably better than you are. And so that's deeply uncomfortable for any founder to say out loud or to think or to know. Right. So instead of saying it, they just don't hire the person. They just keep doing the job themselves and call it being hands-on, a hands-on CEO. Right. But number two, the business has to work without you. Again, if you stepped away for a month and your business folded, you don't have a business.
Mm-hmm.
I have this problem all the time where my clients want me. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then I didn't hire the right people around me, right? And I've watched founders get weirdly resentful when their company starts running smoothly without them, because the chaos was the thing that made them feel important. Like, oh, they need me, right? And when you take the chaos away and you actually put systems and good people in place, they don't know who they are anymore, because like nobody needs them anymore, right? So they unconsciously create the chaos, and then they wonder why they can't scale, because they're operating in chaos for their own ego, right? And then the last one is you have to have trust. And most founders don't, because they got here by not trusting, right? So every scar that I say, they have wounds rather than scars, right? I know for me, like I have wounds that I haven't healed into a scar yet. And so, it's whether you got burned or a client or a vendor, whatever, they learn the lesson. If you want to do it right, just do it yourself. And that lesson got them to 1 million, maybe got them to 5, but that is what's going to keep them there forever, and not scale past 10. You cannot scale past 10 by just having that mentality. If I want it done, I do it myself. So, I mean, that's most people aren't talking about. Most people aren't talking about how founders have never been managed well themselves, or that they've maybe not been taught this. Most of us haven't gone through a school to teach us how to be entrepreneurs, or have founders that have done this, that have mentors that have done this that can help us. They went from working for someone they hated or in corporate, to quitting to building their own thing, and they have nothing to model. A great partnership between a CEO and a number 2, 3, 4. They've never actually probably seen it. And it's so different when you're writing the paychecks versus working at a corporation and the corporation's writing the paychecks. It is so, so different. The weight on your shoulders are so different. So yeah, I mean, I would say those are the 3 main things.
Well, they're great. And one of the things that you brought up that I've seen recently, I was talking with a client who's become a friend who was self-made, right? He started out in his industry just with himself in a vehicle and one tool, right? And now he's got 60 some odd employees and all of that. And he's aware of a couple of clients that I have worked with where I have helped them buy businesses, and they have way greater quality of life than he does. And what we've discussed and you just touched on is that they all came from corporate jobs. And so there's an element of they learned how to just be part of a machine as opposed to I am the machine and now I'll strap on all these pieces to try to make it work. And so their mentality is different. And I do appreciate there's, the self-made person. I mean, he can dig into a level that a lot of people can't. And the experience that some of the folks that come from corporate America have is exactly what you just described. And they're less attached to the ego or the identity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's hard I think for what you guys do, like buying businesses is different than building it from the ground up a little bit. Because I know for me, when I'm building something from the ground up, it 100% has become part of my identity. And it is all I think about because it's my baby, right? The biggest mistake you could do is call your business a baby. I have a client who did that to my mentor, who is my partner in the Wealth Mastery, and she just ripped her to shed. She was like, "Don't ever call it your baby. Don't ever call your baby because you can't sell your baby." She was like, "So now we're selling your company in 32 months." Like she was like very specific, and it just, you can't call it your baby because otherwise you'll never let go of it. And it really is your identity, right?
Well, it's powerful. Yeah, there's a lot of power in those words. And my friend and client, we've had conversations about he's still running it as if it's him. And that's why it's killing him, because he cannot delegate. He does not have a number two that he can count on to the level that's necessary for him to separate a little bit. So he's still in this survival mindset of a startup and doesn't realize that he's way beyond that. His company is way beyond that at this point. But it can be a trap, like you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's an element of this ego is kind of, that word is frowned upon, of course, but identity is such a big piece. We get used to doing something. We feel good about it. It's purpose. And I can certainly relate as well to this idea that if I was not needed, well, what do I do? Like where's my value? And that's an interesting soul search that people have to make if they're going to go to the next level.
Well, I mean, it's what I tell founders. At some point, you have to stop being the founder and start being the owner. And an owner has a distance. An owner can look at the business like an asset. An owner can make the hard calls. A founder can't, because a founder is too close to see clearly. A founder has an identity that's attached to the business. And that shift from founder to owner is the hardest shift in entrepreneurship. And nobody talks about it because it's not a sexy topic. But I mean, that's the most important thing. Like it's the line that people can't cross, but the people who can cross it scale it, and the people that don't, they plateau, and then they wonder why.
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate of even the title that you just used would help somebody make that jump, wouldn't it? If you're thinking of a founder, you're stuck there. And when you think of an owner or a CEO or a chairman, as you've used those terms, they come with a different identity and a different purpose and objective. And I can see huge power in just even a different title as somebody's trying to progress.
Yeah, exactly.
So when somebody's trying to scale their business, where do you see the roadblocks aside from what we've already discussed? So much of what I hear is people wanting to scale and a big exit, and that's what they're driving towards. And maybe they're missing the, smelling the roses along the way. How have you seen it done effectively where somebody can truly scale, maintain a quality of life that's beneficial, and get where they're going?
Well, it's so funny that you asked this question because obviously I've grown. I've had 8 exits. Several of those were marketing agencies. I am part owner in the 3rd largest advertising agency in the US right now. And what's interesting is most founders, when they hit a wall, the roadblocks are almost never where or what the founders think they are. If you asked me, 10 years ago, I would have been like marketing, duh, or technology, because I have a marketing technology company. They totally need a new sales strategy or more leads or a better funnel. And then what do? They go buy a course, or they hire an agency, or they launch another channel. That's always what people think are the problem, but none of that's actually the problem. A lot of the times what I'm finding, especially now being business partners with Amelia Antonetti, who's all about behavior. And I'm really learning how behavior impacts your decision making. And a lot of people always will go to her and say, hey, I have a problem with my COO or my investors, or, my problem is X, my problem is Y, and it's never internal. But what's interesting, the real roadblocks almost always end up being internal. And so it's funny. So, I mean, I think when you look at what could they be, I mean, the first is the founder themselves. And I said it earlier before, but I'll say it again, the ceiling of the company is almost always the ceiling of the founder. The
Wow.
business can't grow past your personal capacity to delegate, to trust, or to be willing to let go. And if you can't hand off your operations, if you completely stop operations capacity level, right? And if you can't hand off sales, you stop at how many deals you personally can close.
Hmm.
And the company is a mirror. Every plateau is a reflection of something that the founder hasn't confronted yet, especially if you're under 10 million. And that's uncomfortable to hear, but it's true almost every single time as we dig into founders and what the issue is. The second is the team, which again, a founder will always say, my team sucks, or my number two sucks, or, and specifically, that's not always the issue. It's not always the team. The team that got you here is almost never the team that takes you there. The team that got you to 1 million is almost never the team that's going to take you to 10, and is almost always never the team that's going to take you to 100. Right.
Hmm.
So the person who used to be a rock star at 1 million in revenue is often the biggest liability at 10, and not because they got worse, but because the job got bigger and they didn't grow with it. And loyalty makes founders hold on to people the way that the past and then it starts adding up, right? You have all
Uh-huh.
these liabilities sitting there, and you don't want to fire them, but they end up being a liability. So every A player that got you to where you want to be is now turned into a B player in 12 months if you're scaling really fast, almost guaranteed. So the third is the offer. I find this a lot. People are trying to fix their traffic problem in their marketing and their messaging, but really it's the offer. And it's most of the time never ever anything else. It's an offer problem. It's a conversion problem. It's a retention problem. If your offer isn't clear, if your pricing is wrong, if your funnel leaks in 3 different points, and pouring more traffic is not going to, it's only going to set it on fire faster. And so I always tell people, they're always like, oh, it's not working, put more ad spend or change the agency, or, and most of the time people are so surprised when I get on the phone with them and I'm like, let's talk about your offer. And they're like, my offer? I'm not changing my offer. Well, how many agencies have you hired? 7? Okay, well, there's something wrong here. And it's probably not the agencies, right?
Uh-huh.
And the last one, and I think this is the one that actually kills companies more than others, is, ideas, 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 ideas. We have this right now with a client who just has idea after idea after idea. And ideas kill companies, especially if you can't stick to what your roadmap is, and you're constantly shifting, and it's like a moving target. And it's really important. We've seen it kill companies, because eventually you're going to run out of money, and eventually your investors are going to stop wanting to give you money because you can't actually complete a project, right?
Yeah. So talk with us about which one you stick with. I mean, there's so much publicity about, tenacity, and you don't give up, and you just keeps. How does somebody know when it's time to give up or change course, not necessarily give up? I mean, it's a fine line, isn't it? And even back to the person that got you where you are may not and might likely not be the person who's going to help you get to the next level. That takes a lot of soul searching and really diving in. So can you share with us what you see in that area?
Yeah, it's actually, to be honest, this is the question nobody wants to answer. Honestly, I mean, that's why we don't talk about it, because the whole entrepreneurship world has been trained to say, don't quit, never give up,
Hmm.
keep pushing through. And that's always the advice that which I feel is kind of broken, but that's the vice that's always out there on TikTok, But the truth and what I think is tenacity is a virtue. I mean, stubbornness is a liability, and most founders don't know the difference between the two. There's a difference of being stuck in your idea, and the idea of your idea, and never giving up on it, and then changing how you're getting there. And that's what I was talking about before. Tenacity is when the mission is still right, the math still works, and the market is still there. The only thing standing between you and the outcome is the time and the effort. Then you push through every single time. Stubbornness is when the mission has changed, which is kind of what I was talking about earlier, that we weren't giving it enough time. We didn't even get to market to test it.
I see.
That was the problem. And so we kept changing and changing and changing before we even got out and tested. And that's the difference, right? And so when the mission has changed or the math stopped working or the market has moved, and you're still grinding because quitting feels like losing, that's not resilience. That's ego dressed up in discipline. And it's the single most expensive mistake a founder can make, which is what's kind of been happening here. So how do you know the difference? I mean, first is the math test. Strip out the emotion, strip out the story you're telling yourself. Look at the numbers. Is the unit economics working? Yes or no, right? Are you making money? What's your cost per acquisition? Are you losing money? How long does it take for you to pay back that one customer that you acquired? Is the customer telling you that this is 10 out of 10 product, or are they telling you it's 1 out of 10? At some point, you've got to quit. I just had this. We bought a commerce company in December. And we had a product. I mean, we were selling like $10,000 a day. It was crazy that everybody wanted this product. But then we were getting reviews, and it was like 1 out of 5, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 5. And I'm like, holy crap. Okay. Return. And my emotion says, okay, gross. We're killing it. Like, if only I could fix what's going on here. But when I looked at the actual facts and took the emotion out of it, and I looked at the reviews and the amount of returns, we ended up canceling the arrangement because at the end of the day, it's our reputation. The returns were insane, and the reviews were things that we either couldn't fix or they weren't willing to fix. And so, as much as I wanted to continue doing it, it just didn't make sense to keep pushing through. I had to pivot to something else. And the second is an energy test. And this is more honest than I think people want to be. But you got to ask yourself, if I knew with certainty that this would take me another 5 years to work, would I still do it? And if the answer is no, you already quit. You just haven't made it official yet. And every day you keep dragging it forward is costing you something that you could actually be building. And then the third is the opportunity cost test. What are you giving up to stay in this? Because every day you spend on the wrong thing is a day that you're not spending on the right things. And most founders don't quit because they're afraid of failure. They're afraid of this identity loss that we keep talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm the founder of X. And if you're not the founder of X anymore, who are you then? Right. And that question is terrifying, but staying in a business that's losing is also terrifying too. And so here's, where people actually give up in real life. They don't wake up one day and they dramatically announce it and they slowly disengage and they stop taking calls. And, and I'm sure you've seen this, right? They quit emotionally. They just stop and they become a zombie. Where doing a cleaner version is having the courage to actually say this isn't the thing anymore, rather than waking up one day as a failure. You're waking up and saying, this is just a stepping stone. I outgrew this. It's not working. I'm going to pivot to something else. And that's the shift that I think most people have to do.
Well, part of what I love about this conversation is it just cuts through so much of the garbage. An honest look at what's actually going on and breaking it down from the emotion to the analytics and what is actually happening, as opposed to what would I wish was happening and what do I want to happen and what do I think I would like to have. Oh my gosh, people can spend a lifetime in that conversation as opposed to the conversation that you're exposing here, which is how to just cut through all that and look at what's actually motivating and driving some of the decisions we're making and how that impacts us. And I can relate to a large extent. I mean, the amount of time I have spent in the past not giving up on something that just flat out needed to go. It's unbelievable. It's embarrassing. And it's I guess we get to take a run at that at some point in business. What are we attached to?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all can say that it's a learning lesson, but I think the fact that you just admitted on air is probably going to be the thing that people remember the most about this episode because else is saying it, right? And the whole industry is built on this fantasy that successful people never quit and that we just have to push through it and it worked. And that's a lie. Every single person I know at a real level has walked away from something that should have walked away years earlier. And they'll tell you in private it was the best thing they ever did. And they'll
Mm,
also tell you that you're being embarrassed is not one of the things that they are. What they are is embarrassed that they didn't walk away. And the reason we all do it is exactly what you said. We conflate what we wish was happening with what's actually happening. And
mhm.
we look at the business we hoped that we would have built and the relationships that we hoped to have and the version of ourselves we hope to have. And we pour energy into this fantasy instead of dealing with the reality that's in front of us. And the longer we do that, the harder it gets to admit, the harder it is to quit. And so we keep going. That it's easier to just keep going. And most people, don't want to separate. And the emotion to do that is just too hard sometimes.
Well, it's a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to continuing it further at some point soon, and certainly at the Wealth Mastery Summit. And it's a conversation that needs to happen. So much business and money and life and quality of life, and then relationships and all of that get lost in this. I will not give up, and there's a time for that. Well, one of the questions I like to talk about fits right in line with what we've been discussing, which is I've never met anybody who got there on their own. Can you share a story about somebody who gave you a hand up to help you become as successful as you are today?
Uh, I have a lot. What I will say, in my 20s, I didn't have any mentors. And I wish I did. I've mentored a lot of kids. I have a couple people that I've been mentoring. One, I took her from 128,000 to she's going to do 15 million this year. I have another that wanted to be an entrepreneur, started mentoring at 17, who's now doing multiple six figures at 19 years old.
Wow.
And I'm mentoring these kids because I didn't have that. I wish I did. And I'm mentoring another teenager right now who is 19, who I'm, trying to give the mentorship I never had. But the truth is, nobody gets there alone. I wasn't by myself. While I didn't have an official mentor, I had people such as my father, who was a really big mentor for me, who in my 20s really helped me understand. And I already kind of talked about my dad, but I mean, he's the one that really gave me everything. I'm actually writing a book right now, and it's about defining moments and all these defining moments in your life that make you who you are. And one of the chapters is called Friday Night Dinners. And it's about how on Friday night, my mom was a hairdresser, so she was always working. And my dad was an executive at IBM, and he ran all the manufacturing plants worldwide. And every Friday night, he and I would get dinner because my sister was in high school, so she'd be out. And so it was like my only time I ever got with my dad. And, most of the time it'd be like pizza or crock pot dinner that my mom made or something. And every Friday we would sit down and he would actually ask me questions about work and we would problem solve together. And he would never give me the answer. He would only ask questions. Like he'd be like, I have to lay off 500 people. How would you do that? And actually, this is a true story that that was actually a real question one week. And so I said to him, I was 7 years old, and I said to him, I said, Dad, well, what if instead of laying the people off, you see if maybe other departments or other companies can take some of them? Because he was really upset about these people being able to afford food for their table for their kids, right? Because that was the kind of guy my dad was. My dad was the kind of manager. He knew every 500 people that worked for him, no
Wow.
joke, two, three, four levels down, and he worked directly for the president of IBM. And so he knew everyone's kids. It was wild. And so it took an impact on him. And so, a couple weeks goes by and he comes home, he goes, Lex, from our Friday night dinner, you gave me a great idea. And he was able to save almost half of the people and put them in other departments and find them jobs. And that got me curiosity. It gave me problem solving. And so in this book, I go through 20 different stories of my childhood and things of these defining moments that gave me either my values or gave me a skill or some bad things too, right? Where I had an opportunity to go down the wrong lane, but I didn't. Instead, I channeled it and used it to do something better and greater. And the point of the book is to get people to see how important these moments are. And so my dad was a huge influence on me. And I would say now in my 30s, I had mentioned earlier my mentor, Amelia Antonetti, who's also my business coach, but also my business partner, has been huge on the behavior side. So she's one of the top behavior specialists in the world. And she has something called the decode method that really decodes and makes you understand. She always says you don't have a people problem, you have a behavior that people are exposing. And I love that line because most founders aren't looking inward at their leadership. They point the finger everywhere else but themselves. And she's really making me a better leader, a better mom, a better wife. This method is incredible, and she's taken me through. It's a journey. It's 5 different levels or stages, whatever you want to call it. And I'm only on level 3. There's 5, and it's as a leader, it really helps you understand where what she calls the root suffering. When you talk about mindset, it's all the way at the top of, we call it a reverse triangle. And so at the top, that's where mindset. Everybody talks about up here, and it's very surface level. But the truth is that gives you tools, but what it doesn't give you is actually the root suffering that's causing that behavior and the mask that you put on top, right? So sometimes people use humor as a mask, for example, right? But what is actually causing that mask to come out is that root suffering. And mine is injustice, because as a kid, my mom was working and my father was always with my sister, and I always felt injustice. Like, why aren't you here with me? Why aren't you noticing me? Right. And so as a 30-year-old, now, once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's my root suffering. And everything, even with work, I'm like, I'll get angry at something and I'm like, oh my God, that's my injustice talking, right? It's my root suffering from a kid. It's so wild, Matt. And when you see it, you really can't unsee it. It is quite incredible. So so 2 different journeys, but those are definitely the 2 biggest mentors I've had.
Well, I appreciate you sharing those with us. And I also appreciate, it's funny, as I know you a little bit here and getting to know you more, hearing the story about your dad and how powerful that is. And also, I'm making this up, but my guess is his ego was not driving him overwhelmingly. He's asking you, how do you think I should deal with this? And yet he's dealing with some serious factors. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here with us today. And how can people find you if they'd like to learn more about what you do and what you have to offer?
Yeah. So you could go to alexadagostino.com. I'm also on all socials as Dr. Alexa D'Agostino. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I have a ton of content out there, and looking forward to hearing from everybody.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and I look forward to seeing you at the Wealth Mastery Summit.
You too.
Thank you. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Part of what I love about What's Your Deal is what Alexa just shared is, again, behind the curtain and cutting through the ego and the conversations that are difficult to have or that aren't sexy, as she alluded to, that just flat out the truth. And if we want to progress in our life and our business and our relationships, getting to the truth is where it's at. So we will see you on the next episode. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and got some valuable insights into the world of buying and selling businesses. Want to be a guest on our show? If you have a deal that you'd like to discuss with us or a business story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email using the contact information below in the episode notes, and let's make this happen. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. It helps more people like you find the show.